Today I'm joined by my friend Mark Ziebarth, businessman, professor, former politician, family man, world traveler, and someone who has reinvented himself multiple times through his life. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Jeff. Delighted to be here. Let's get into it.
Second round, but we'll leave that at the table. I guess, for you, we've known each other for a long time, traveled to Europe a few times. I've got to know who you are to a degree. I only got to, of course, I met you when you moved to Canada, but now let's talk about where I think it's important to let everyone know where you're from and what was your upbringing like. And yeah.
Well, it's a bit unique because I'm one of the few who can say I was born and raised inside the city of Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is a very important city, a very well-known city, but it's not a very big city. And in Washington, D.C., I had a great family upbringing with a solid Catholic, traditional family, 5 brothers and sisters, mom and dad, both working professional jobs, but we needed both professional jobs to support 8 people in the family. And we would walk to the church, and we would walk to the elementary school, and we would walk to the playground, and it was just a fabulous way to grow up. Very safe, very comfortable, and to my mind, very normal, even though in hindsight, it's not the way a lot of people grew up. And certainly in Washington, D.C., where politics is everything.
Mainstream, yeah.
We didn't think it was odd that we talked politics at the dinner table, not sports, not religion. Yeah. We talked politics.
That one's still, yeah.
So politics was very much a part of our daily life because it was coursing through the veins of Washington, D.C. and anyone who lived there. And we were very interested in politics, but my parents were not political people. They were professionals.
Yeah. I was going to talk about Boston, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Now, both your parents worked for the government, right?
Right. The mother worked for congressmen being the equivalent of members of parliament here in Canada. And they get elected or reelected or booted out every 2 years. So in Washington, there was and still is a whole cast of professional staff members who rotate through these offices. And they work for a congressman for 2, 4, 6 years. He gets booted out, and then they go to work for another one. My mother would work for any Republican or Democrat as long as he, and they were all men at the time, as long as he was a conservative. She would not work for a liberal.
Really?
That was her ideology.
Absolutely,
okay?
Yeah.
And that came home as well. We were raised as classical liberals, little classical liberals running around the dinner table.
It's funny because you brought that up in an earlier conversation about the liberal being liberal, and I was actually going to, one of the questions I was going to ask was, what shaped you early on?
Yeah, well, dinner table conversations about the right way to run the world.
Yeah.
And our view was limited government, strong national defense, free enterprise, and individual liberty.
Yeah, there it is.
That's our mantra.
The American dream.
Yep.
Right. The American dream.
And in my 68 years on this planet, we've gotten further and further away from those principles, not closer and closer.
Yeah.
And I think it costs our country, our nation, our world.
Agreed, especially when they're looked upon as the free nation, and so that was one of the questions. The other was, I guess we can talk a little bit later because we're going to discuss your political career. But anyway, you're born and raised in Washington, D.C., not an insulated, but sounds like well-rounded upbringing. You had 3 sisters. You went to university. You said,
Well, first you have to know that I went to a military high school. It was a day school.
I actually remember your conversations from past going, I was a sword-carrying 4th degree, whatever.
Yeah. I was a lieutenant.
Right.
And when I graduated, I wore a uniform and carried a sword and walked down the aisle of the National Shrine in Washington, D.C. That's where my high school graduation was. Yeah. I am going to Washington, D.C. next week to attend my 50th high school reunion at that same school.
Wow, fascinating.
And I've still got that saber, that sword.
You gonna bring it?
I might not get it on the plane, but
TSA.
yeah, rules have changed a little in 50 years.
Oh, that's cool.
So
yeah,
Washington was a great place to grow up. Then I went to college, came back to Washington, and basically my first job out of college was working for a public policy research institute called the Heritage Foundation.
Right.
Very well known. Used to do lots of research studies and things for congressmen and senators to help them make decisions about various pieces of legislation. It was a great way for me to be involved with politics without being a politician, and focused on the important stuff, policy, not the fluff, which is what a lot of people hear about with politics and politicians, the fluff, the noise, the flutter, rather than the substance, whether you agree or not with the policy. The substance is the policies they put in place, and the governments then enact and enforce or don't enforce.
Right.
That's really your tax dollars at work. And so I've been involved with and paid attention to that all my life, as have all my brothers and sisters. It's just what we grew up with.
Cool. So, but again, 3 sisters, right? Georgetown.
3 sisters, 2 brothers.
Yeah.
Really smart sisters. So, the brothers are chasing after the sisters from day one, trying to keep up. And
typical.
They're all getting A pluses and 4.0s and all of that, and we're not. And so you have to figure out your own path. Yeah. And my own path was to leave Washington and go away to college and then come back and then be involved in politics indirectly rather than as a politician, because that just wasn't the call.
But on your way, you sort of, so you university, and then you ended up going to work in, was it Boston?
Eventually, yes. What happened was that I spent 5 years in my first job working for the Heritage Foundation, but in a businessman capacity, not a politician or policy capacity.
Good experience. Like, wow.
I was a fundraiser.
Yeah.
These not-for-profits are dependent on raising money.
Right.
And some of them these days do it very, very successfully. We were a much smaller operation then, and we had to basically write letters and hold fundraisers and ask people for money.
That one is fascinating. I want to zero in on that a little bit, because that's early ad copy.
It is absolutely.
And you're writing that by hand.
Yeah. I mean, we were barely using computers, but we were using some pretty prehistoric computers and very modest databases. And I literally remember taking paragraphs and physically cutting and pasting them before we could electronically cut and paste them, so that we could send similar letters to 10 or 100 donors, not have to write each one over and over.
Good experience at that age too.
But you want to talk about sales copy? When you're selling a widget, you describe the features and translate it into benefits. Yeah. Well, how do you sell ideas?
Yeah.
How do you get people to give you money to hire other people to write research papers, to influence politicians, to produce good legislation? Well, it's a pretty distributed chain there.
Pretty obscure.
But my job was to write those letters and get people to donate. And so I was responsible, and I had a boss who was very good at this. Yeah. We had to create benefits around intangibles, because we weren't giving them anything physical. We were giving the donor something else, some other reward that they found satisfactory. And their reward was often they thought they were helping make the country a better place by supporting our efforts. That's a pretty high-level sale.
That is a really high-level sale. That's a hard sell.
It is. And, I was responsible for the $500 to $5,000 level-ish.
Right.
My boss was the $500,000 to $1 million donor.
Right.
And then the executive, the chairman, the big cheese would go after the real big money.
Yeah, the big whales.
Yes.
Interesting. So, no, actually, we glossed over something. I did, and my apologies. When you're talking about Washington, D.C. and being brought up there and your political influence and stuff, there's a story that I didn't want to miss this. And this is, your grandmother was a nurse for several presidents.
Yeah, I guess I'm a 3rd or 4th generation Washingtonian, and there aren't very many of us.
Interesting.
Who've had descendants go back that far living in Washington, D.C. But my grandmother was a nurse. And the reason she became a nurse was this is World War I. She wanted to go to the front lines and drive a Jeep and an ambulance and help the cause. And she went to nursing school and she graduated and she was shipped out to San Francisco and she was on her way to Europe when the war ended. And so she comes back to Washington, D.C., which is her hometown. And before she leaves the nursing service, which was part of the U.S. Navy then, the White House calls the Navy and says, hey, we need you to send over a nurse because the White House health care was provided by the U.S. Navy. Long story short. And they looked in a room full of nurses and plucked my grandmother out and said, you, over to the White House. Words to that effect. So she then essentially moved into the White House for several months, taking care of the president and his wife. The president at the time was Warren G. Harding. This is after Woodrow Wilson. So this is late 20s, 1928, something like that, 29, 30. President Harding had a few issues, including something called the Teapot Dome scandal. And part of the reason that he decided to take a cross-country goodwill trip was to change attitudes about what they were saying about the president. And so he decided to go to Alaska and become perhaps the very first U.S. president to visit the Alaska territories. They weren't states at the time. And the only way you could get there was by train all the way across the country and then probably boat, train north. And he did that. My grandmother came along because she was the nurse. They also brought a doctor along because you had to have a male doctor, but the women nurses did the real caretaking. They get to San Francisco and then they take a boat, I think, up to Canada. They stop in Vancouver. They visit Stanley Park. Today, there's a huge stone monument to the visit that president made to Stanley Park in Vancouver.
Very cool.
First time a U.S. president ever visited.
Wow, that's
From there, they go up to Alaska. They have a great trip, goodwill trip, lots of good press. And then they take a boat back to San Francisco. Where the president dies in his hotel room at night with his wife and my grandmother in the room on this trip. Unexpectedly, he had been suffering from congestion, consumption, various things nobody really knew. But he wasn't so sick that it didn't stop the doctor and the team from going out to dinner. They all went out to dinner. The wife and the president and my grandmother stayed at the hotel. I actually have visited this hotel. I visited the room that the president stayed in and died in. It's fabulous. He dies unexpectedly. And so they take the train back to Washington, D.C. with all the black bunting and slowly going through all the small towns across the country so everyone can pay their respects to the deceased president. They get back to Washington. They bury the president, and my grandmother is still in the Navy. She's still a nurse, but she's trying to figure out what she's going to do now. What's her next chapter? And President Wilson's wife calls the U.S. Navy and says, we want that woman, that nurse, assigned to our house. Because the former President Wilson, who's not in good health, is still living in Washington, D.C. after his presidency had ended 2 or 3 years prior. And so my grandmother goes over to the house in Washington, D.C. of President Wilson and his wife, Edith Wilson, and gets put in a bedroom with President Wilson on one side of the house and Mrs. Wilson on the other, which is the way you do these things. And my mother, my grandmother, the nurse, was responsible for keeping President Wilson alive. You go visit President Wilson's home, which is now a museum in Washington, D.C. You go upstairs. There are 3 bedrooms. His on the left, hers on the right, and my grandmother's in the center. It's a small one. There's a picture of my grandmother sitting there right above the electric paddles. And she would pick up the paddles, run into the room, and shock the former president and keep him alive. That was her job.
My gosh.
So that lasted for a couple of months. But the president was in ill health, and he eventually passed away with my grandmother in the room because that was her job. So in the space of 6 months, She was in the room when 2 U.S. presidents died. And there is no one else in the world before or since or perhaps ever who can make that claim. There's actually a book written that claimed that she was responsible for a Catholic conspiracy to kill U.S. presidents. Absurd, but
Which is absurd, but hey, interesting though.
story.
That is a great story, man.
And we grew up with this. My mother really fanned the flames of this family lore and kept it alive. And so all of us know these stories. My children know these stories.
So now I see where you get your sort of, when you said something about, like I think about your grandmother as a nurse and volunteering to go to Europe and just that pride of America type of thing back then when people cared about the country, wanted the country to succeed. I'm all about, I'll do whatever it is. It's the old John F. Kennedy saying, isn't it? Ask not what you can do or what you can do for your country versus, what is the actual quote? I can't remember.
Ask not what your country can do
for you, but
what you can do for your country.
That was the way it was back then. And actually in Canada, we used to think that a lot about Americans. It was just a natural, they're much prouder than we are. It seemed like I was brought up with that for some reason. Because America was everything great and the American dream and all the freedom. And I mean, we had that in Canada, but it was different. I don't know. I guess we were British rule or something. Well, we're stuffy.
Perhaps because you didn't have to, as Canadians, we didn't have to bleed for it as much.
That's
Americans bled for it. Right or wrong, agree or disagree.
Yeah, no,
they perhaps appreciate it more.
100%. So, okay. So I'm glad I brought that back up because I like, I heard bits and pieces of it before, but not to that extent. So I appreciate that.
So, continuing the story, I grew up in Washington. I'm surrounded by politicians. We're in a very political house and neighborhood, but I did not want to be in politics as a career. That wasn't my calling. That wasn't my interest. I wanted to be in business, which is odd because my family worked for the government. Most of my brothers and sisters have government-like jobs.
Yeah.
I just knew that I wanted to be a practitioner in the free enterprise system. And I honed this.
I love that title.
Well, it means a lot to me to say it that way.
Yeah.
Because when I finished college and went to work at the Heritage Foundation, I spent 5 years writing these fundraising proposals. I was literally teaching myself the principles of classical liberalism. What's really important? Smaller government, not bigger.
Yeah.
Strong national defense, not weak. Individual liberty, not state control. Free enterprise, not clogging up the system. And in those 5 years, I said, I want to go practice this. I don't want to just write about it. I want to go practice it. So I literally left there and joined a publishing company after I got my master's degree. I was able to earn my master's degree while working at the Heritage Foundation. Yeah. And the whole goal was now get out of here and go to work for the big companies. That's what I did. And I joined a Fortune 100 called Verizon. It was a division of AT&T, but at the time it was breaking up and it was called a Baby Bell, and then it became Verizon. But we know it today as Verizon. It's a very big, successful telecommunications company. Yeah. So I joined there in basically a management training program, and I couldn't last more than a year. Suffocating, bureaucratic, slow, boring, all the things that I was not interested in. I wanted fast, change, rapid, all that. And so I had to leave that safe cocoon, and I left it and joined a much smaller, not a startup, but a much smaller business information publishing company, because I wanted out of the big company, because I still wanted to be in business, and because someone that I had met during my Heritage Foundation years introduced me to the owner of this company, who was a true entrepreneur. He created this publishing company from his garage with $1,000. And when I joined, it was probably $30 million in revenue and 100 employees ish.
Okay.
And I spent the next 11 years there learning at his knee, along with
Yeah.
others like me.
Yeah.
And he basically took his company and divided it into business units and gave, not legally, but gave a business unit to operators like me and said, here's the business, here's the product, here is the revenue, go multiply it, go run it.
Wow.
Come back to me with problems, but mostly come back to me with results. And then I'm going to grade you. And if you do well, I'm going to give you more product and more money. If you don't do well, I'm going to fire you. And I spent 11 years cycling through that over and over again.
Unbelievable.
And there were another dozen guys and girls like me who did the same thing.
Great experience.
It was fabulous. And it really showed me that I could be an entrepreneur too.
Yeah.
I had never thought that I would be an entrepreneur. I wanted to be in business. But an entrepreneur is in charge, is responsible, makes the decisions, reaps the rewards.
You know me.
And it took me a while to reach the point at which I realized I wanted to chase that dream too.
Where did the J. Abrams thing come in? Was that part of the?
So in the 11 years that I'm at this publishing company, they have a business to business division, which is what I focused on. And then they build a consumer division, consumer publishing division, selling investment newsletters.
Okay.
And health newsletters.
Right.
Specifically something called Healthy Directions, which was a newsletter by a doctor, but the real moneymaker was selling vitamin supplements to the newsletter subscribers.
Yeah.
So the doctor is telling you in the newsletter, you should take vitamin supplements. And by the way, I have my own line of vitamin supplements here. And so people would subscribe to the vitamin supplement program, and this became huge business. I wasn't working on that side, but.
Well, when you're talking about the revenue, even back then, 30 million, and you said it was like 330 million.
So when I left 11 years later, $330 million a year in revenue, about 230 million of that was on the consumer side. 100 million of that was on the business to business side.
Wow. And
about 1,200 employees. And this boss, he was very low key, very unassuming, very smart.
Yeah.
He decided he was going to reward us one day, and he took the whole company to Disney World. All the employees with spouses and children.
Wow.
Ended up, there were probably roughly 400 employees at that time, 500 who went on the trip, and brought along another 600 or 700 dependents.
Yeah.
So we had 1,200 people that he flew from Washington, D.C. Down to Orlando, Florida for 2 nights and paid the whole bill.
Because that was that was a long time ago.
Right. That would have been roughly 1995-ish.
Yeah. Okay. So sure. That's still, man, that's a lot of.
It was such a big deal. We ended up on Good Morning America.
Wow. Okay.
Because no one was doing this kind of thing.
It sounds really, I was going to say obscure, but it's not something you hear every day like
No.
that.
And it was $1 million plus expenditure by the boss, but he got his money's worth. Because here we are 35 years later talking about it.
Yeah. Well, good. I mean, it's like, so here you got the, I love his business model, by the way. Exactly what he's explaining. It's like, you're putting trust into people.
Yep.
And you're saying, hey, give me the results first. If there's any problems, I'll help you along the way. Man, that is something that is most entrepreneurs cannot let go. I'm constantly talking to business owners where they can't let go, so they become the bottleneck. They can't trust somebody. They didn't hire the right person. So I can't. You heard my conversation I had earlier, right? He doesn't trust that person. It's like, well, then maybe move on with somebody else so you can then you can have trust people. They will build the company. My company wasn't what do you call it? Wasn't perfect. As much as I wanted it to be perfect all the time, but at least I had people doing everything I couldn't do and didn't want to do.
Right. Exactly.
And that's hard to. And
so as a professor, which we haven't really talked about yet, I spend a lot of time advising my students, coaching my students, and teaching my students.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly telling them that the analogy of being an entrepreneur and running a business is like being a parent. You have a child. It's wonderful. It's great. But somebody's got to change the diapers.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to clean up. Somebody's got to train and coach and advise that child to become a young adult. And then at some point, between 20 to 30, you have to let go.
Yeah.
And if you don't let go, you crimp their growth.
Yeah.
If you do let go, they go and create something beyond what you could ever have imagined.
And I think as a business owner, you have to have some type of involvement in that.
Mm-hmm.
As I was talking with a gentleman earlier in his business, I said, look, man, we used to have mosh pit meetings where we talk about the wins. Well, as a leader, you have to implement that and then get somebody else to run it. And then, like, as you put it, get people talking about the wins, so they start opening up and talking to you about what's going on in their lives. Because a win could be, I got out of bed this morning. Because some people that would come to work were happier at work in their career than they were at home. That's another story. But I agree with you 100%, man. I probably spent most of I'm not taking away from you on this, but I spent most of my life mentoring people in the business. It was always about, and bringing them up and telling that, hey, this is the opportunity, always rose-colored glasses as usual. But anyway. Okay, so so tell me more. Okay, you come out of that after 11 years, and then at what point, okay, you decided, we kind of touched on this, you decided you're going to get into your own business.
Yeah, and so I was leaning that way after 11 years working for this entrepreneur, and I was partnering with another gentleman to try and explore the possibility of finding a business for sale or creating something. And we ended up joining someone who had already started a business, and he's a very well-known writer and futurist named George Gilder. And he had a very successful newsletter in partnership with Forbes magazine, but he needed to build out business infrastructure around his operation. So my potential partner and I, who were working together at one company, left there and moved up to Massachusetts to join George Gilder and work with him for a couple of years in building up this business. And we succeeded in building it up quite a bit, but then it dashed itself upon the rocks of the internet boom and doom gloom.
The dot bomb.
The dot bomb com, whatever we call it these days. As
you lived through it like the Great Depression.
Right. But we thought we were really smart on the way up. Mm-hmm. And perhaps we weren't as smart as we thought, because we certainly weren't as dumb as we felt.
Typical
on the way
entrepreneur's
down.
Life too, right?
Right. Way up real fast, way down
real quick. Yeah.
And so in 2003, I needed to find a job. 4 kids, wife, dog, house, mortgage. It's like, okay, well, I'm living in Boston, New York corridor. I can go anywhere and get a job. Or do I take this opportunity to actually scratch that itch about being an entrepreneur?
Yeah.
And my wife and I decided this is the time to try it, because no telling what'll happen. Let's go. Take 6 months, see what you can do. And I took all that 6 months to find a company to buy, and I found one. I was not going to start a company from scratch with an idea. I didn't have an idea. I had the idea that I could find someone else's existing company and buy it at a good price and make it a better company. And that's what I went in search of, and that's what I found. And it just happened to be in another country.
What's really cool about that came from your time with that 11 years with that guy, and you met a lot of different people in that, I'm sure, because you made a lot of sales.
What you referred to earlier as proximity if I hadn't done my 11 years with that company, learning these things, empowering others, building up my confidence, there's no way I would have said, I can buy a company.
Yeah.
And even then, once I said I could buy a company, I knew I could almost buy a company, but I would need other people's money.
Yeah, exactly. And something you said, we talked about this a little bit earlier. I can maybe circle back on it, but just the advantage that most people have now is there's AI. It's up and coming. And we had disadvantages and advantages back then in business too. The disadvantage is we didn't have a cell phone early on. I had a pager. Things were slower.
We had fax machines.
Yeah, with fax machines. You ever change the paper in a fax machine? Anyway, get off the deep end here. we can bring that up actually a little bit business, but yeah. Anyhow, the background that you've got you there. Now you're ready. You're thinking of what you bought the company.
So and I had to go out and raise a lot of money, $3.5 million US to buy the company. But the partners were willing to do that because I was willing to move to Canada and run the business on their behalf primarily. Yeah. And I was a very small minority owner, but it's what I wanted to do. I knew I could invest intellectual property, and if we built it big enough, I'd get rewarded eventually.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Yeah.
Good plan. Pretty good execution, but then fell out with the partners along the way. My vision went left, their vision went right. Yeah. And so because of the majority owners, I was the one who left.
But that's a big move, because you moved from basically the Boston area to little old Penticton nowhere in British Columbia.
But we're talking about 7 years, so there was plenty of time to adapt and adjust. But still, 7, 8 years later, there I am again, no job, 4 kids, house, whatever. And I knew that I could do this again. I could find another company to buy. I could raise capital if I needed. Yeah. And I also knew that I didn't want to give up control. I wanted to have
makes sense
equal or majority control so that I could be in control of my own destiny as much as possible. So
actually, I'll just make a note, because when you came to work, and we'll bring this up later, I guess, but when you worked with me, I remember one of the reasons I hired you was because of that. I was in the sort of the throes of changing things up, and I needed someone to bounce that off, if you remember.
Right. As a sounding board.
As a sounding board. And
so that's thinking the era I'm talking about now as well.
Because you learned, right?
Yep. And
either easy way or hard way.
So I'm looking for a company to buy, and I try a few different things, including doing some consulting work with you at the time, learning about your industry and hopefully helping you out, think through some things. And you afforded me the opportunity to spend some time pursuing a political agenda and start my teaching career.
I don't know how you did it back then, because I was thinking about, you were with us all day, and that in itself is like when you talked about employees, and you were comparing a business to having a family and parenting. Well, the business that I was in required all my employees to be social workers, because you were dealing with stressed out, traumatized people that had fire and floods and all this other. And then anyway, so I always laugh. I laugh because here you are dealing with that all day. Then you're going out networking at night. Yep. And I'll never forget that wine thing and all that, right? That was constant. I said to Julie one day, I go, I don't know how he does it.
Well, there was this desire to scratch a political itch for me. Always interested in politics.
Yeah.
There was an opportunity at a moment in time to run for office, and through your and other good graces, I decided to pursue it. Yeah. And I did. Yeah. And I'm glad I did, but I hated it. When all was said and done, I hated the process, because you have to put yourself out there. Yeah. You share your ideas. Yeah. You really make yourself vulnerable. And the people you hear from the most are the ones trying to cut you down. Mm. It's part of the system. Yeah. It's not very attractive. Yeah. And it takes a really tough skin to succeed there. And I don't have a tough skin.
Yeah,
I don't like people cutting me down.
I'm Canadian.
I punch them back, right?
Yeah. I'm sorry and thankful. No.
So I was not cut out to be an elected politician. And it goes back to my first job at the Heritage Foundation, where I realized what I really liked was the policy and the implications of politics, not the politics themselves, not the running for office, not the getting elected. Right. Didn't like any of that.
That's interesting, because there's ones that are,
but that's all they do.
That's their jam.
Right. So through all of this, I'm looking for a company to buy. I'm consulting with you. I'm running for office, and I start teaching. I teach a class at the college because I have the time, I have the opportunity, I'm interested. And then I teach another class. And then within a year, I'm a full-time professor there, and I fell in love with teaching college age kids, 20 to 25-year-olds, about business. And it was never the plan. I never went to school for this. I never got a certificate in teaching. But because of my education and because of my experience, I was deemed qualified to teach these students about applying these skills in the real world in a business setting. And it's absolutely true. It's what I do. I've been doing it for 13 years now.
Yeah.
And it turns out I'm pretty good at it, and the kids are benefiting from it. And in turn, I benefit from it in ways that I never benefited from my businesses. Meaning I don't make a whole lot of money as a teacher.
Yeah.
I get rewarded in different ways.
Yes, I was going to say that. Yeah, because you mentioned that earlier in a previous conversation about, and I think you mentioned something about money. Yeah, you're right. You don't make a lot of money, and at the
You don't
end of
go
the
into it
day,
to make money.
No, you definitely don't. But think about this. Okay, one of the things you were saying, you were just in Paris for 10 days as a professor, right? Anyway, let's back up a little bit, just because the politics side. So you ran for office, didn't make it,
Right.
whatever. Realized where you were at politically, but you learned a lot of how the whole system works and the community part of you, right? Because you met a lot of people in the community, as you put it. You met, you crossed the street from
Growing up in Washington, D.C.,
yeah,
surrounded by politics and politicians at the highest level.
Yeah.
Part of my job involved dealing with politicians a lot in Washington, D.C., at the highest level, not as a politician, but as a publisher of information and holding events that would attract these politicians. And, I remember meeting Sonny Bono's wife. Sonny Bono was a member of Congress who was killed in a skiing accident.
I remember that.
And his
Sonny
wife,
and Cher,
his wife Mary took over his seat, and she would come over to our offices for events and things like that. And she was delightful. But that's Sonny Bono's wife.
Yeah, that's kind of a cool. But yeah, definitely different politics.
Where I was going with that is I admire politicians, even though I couldn't be one myself.
Right.
And I think every politician, left wing or right wing, Republican, conservative, Democrat, whatever, they deserve our support and admiration for what they do.
100%. Yeah.
Even though half of them, I think, are flaming idiots.
Yeah, I agree.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
On principle, they deserve our
But that's a
admiration.
really good lesson to anyone that's listening, I think, is that you want something changed. First of all, change your attitude. Vote for the right person, I suppose. And sometimes you don't get the right person, and we don't need to get into that. But stay the course. At least stay the course, and don't be that person that, you run into the circles with people and they start trash talking everybody. You're like, that is so draining, and you get nothing done.
Exactly.
Anyhow.
So I admire politicians, and I believe they do service for our community.
Yeah.
I had to learn through my life experiences that my way of serving community ended up being as a teacher.
Right.
And I believe I provide a valuable service to my community as a college professor, educating the next generation of business leaders in the Okanagan Valley of British Columbia, Canada. And I love doing it, and I think they benefit, and it's what I just know it's what I was meant to be doing at this stage in my life. I still have a company. I still run a publishing company, but that's very much a second fiddle to my teaching and working.
It's almost a side hustle.
Right, working with these kids.
But then so now here we are, you're a professor teaching business, and you're going to Paris. And there was this year, how many years have you gone to Europe to teach?
So 3 years, for the last 3 years, I have the opportunity to take to utilize a fund at the college to go over to Europe and do teaching. I teach the same topics over there. I teach it to French and German students who want an exposure to a North American teaching mentality.
Interesting.
And a North American business mentality. And the school systems over there want their students to be exposed to this because they know, whether we like it or not, the business world is dominated by the English language and by North American enterprise. Yeah. Not 100%, not completely, but it's where the growth engine is. And all of those European students, They're trying to figure out how they're going to make a career that includes North America, because that's where the
because I mean, really, what do they call it? The gig economy, where your careers are fine. There's going to be careers. You're going to be a doctor. You're going to be a lawyer. But there's also that gig economy. Nowadays, you can do business internationally so easy.
correct.
And so that's interesting. So here you are. You've got kind of a dream job now,
I do.
right? As you put it earlier, you said union dream job doesn't pay a lot. Doesn't matter because you get at this age you get
All
a lot
sorts
out
of
of
benefits.
it. I was thinking about your boss while you were saying, "Here I've arrived and I'm teaching people." It's what he did with you.
Yeah.
He mentored you the way you're mentoring them, which is really awesome, right?
Exactly.
And it makes me think about, we were talking about this earlier, where you're at in life. You realize that, I don't have to be doing this. I've made my money from, selling the companies and did fine and have always done fine, but I just can't rest. And it's not about the money. It's just not. It's about what can you do to help your fellow man, which this theme, you were brought up in Washington, D.C., is politics it's a lot of, as far as I can see, it's what's happening in the community. How's everything coming together? Service.
At the highest levels, there's a lot of allure of power and money and all that.
There's that, but at the base of it is like, I always think of Earl Nightingale said this. If anyone doesn't know who Earl Nightingale is, they should look him up. But anyway, he said, as soon as you realize life is about service, you'll do fine. That's all he ever used to say. And it's true.
Yep.
Does that mean, even at this age, I feel like getting my creative out and interviewing, people like yourself gets that message out that, hey, a lot of things we can do on this planet. And as a matter of fact, you're never done.
Until you're done.
until you're done. So tell me about, so here you are, you're a professor now. How has AI affected the students? And how is it like, what do you see with AI? What is your whole thought process?
It's interesting. I see a lot of fear, a lot of concern, a lot of worry. And I read copiously every day online, and I see lots of fear out there. Mm-hmm. In my students, I see a lot of fear about, oh my God, are there going to be jobs for us when we graduate?
Right.
Are we going to have the right skill set? And part of my job is to instill in them some confidence that learning how to think critically and analyze situations and apply tools is your key to success. I can't say that for the liberal arts grads. I can't say that for the other grads. I can only say that for my business school students.
Yeah.
If they pay attention and absorb and apply, they're going to succeed. And that includes artificial intelligence, but I'm talking about AI as a tool.
Right.
And there are lots of tools out there, and some people master some, other people master others. I talk to my students about approaching artificial intelligence broadly as a set of tools which are wildly popular and powerful, but you have to learn them. Because otherwise you cannot put them to work. And if you learn them and you put them to work, you will master them. And it's just like becoming a heavy-duty mechanic. If you learn how to do all those things and punch all those buttons and make those gizmos go, you're valuable. And someone will pay you lots of money to do that.
Yeah.
Same thing with artificial intelligence. But in the business world, where things are so much more general than just heavy-duty mechanic, you can be a businesswoman in 1,000 different settings, right? Mm-hmm. Every one of those can benefit from you utilizing the tool called artificial intelligence to improve the business operations, attract more customers, whatever. That's why someone will hire our graduates, because they can improve someone's business.
Absolutely. Really good. And Ashley, I know you talked about this earlier about critical thinking, and you're right. There's this fear about AI, but the fact is it should create a lot more jobs as well.
It will create a lot more jobs. No doubt about it.
No doubt. Yeah.
You just don't hear many people saying that. Yes, there will be jobs erased, and there will be more and better jobs created.
And so I know we talked about this earlier, and there's a lot of hype online about you don't need to go to university. You don't need to learn this. I think that that's crazy talk, because I think kids up till 25, their brains are developing or whatever. Go to school. It doesn't just end at grade 12 or 13 in Ontario.
If at all possible.
If at all.
Some people can't.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with going to a vocational route and becoming a licensed plumber and electrician and making $200,000 a year. And
No, nothing wrong with that. No.
and we need lots of them.
Yeah.
But we also need lots of people who invest in themselves through the age of 22, 25 to train that brain.
I agree.
To do higher level things.
Yeah.
And from that training and applying that brain, that gift between our ears, great things happen.
Yeah.
And there are lots of examples out there, but the one I like to quote, use the most, is Elon Musk. He's just a guy.
Yeah.
Okay. He's a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
There's a brain between those ears, but the way he applies it and the things that that brain creates are phenomenal.
Yeah.
Compared to what most of us create.
Yeah.
It just shows you what's possible. And if one person can do it, why can't 100 people do it?
Yeah. Elon Musk is fascinating in that, his story, and you talked about selling stories earlier.
Yep.
Actually, I was thinking of Silicon Valley when you're mentioning writing ad copy for raising capital, right? Storytelling 101. So his North Star is what? Mars. And the humanoids and the rockets and everything else are all kind of noise, but it's also a way of, raising capital, and it doesn't stop. So yeah, no, I agree. There's another story about Elon Musk where he walks into the office one day, he goes, "We got to shut some servers down." Okay, well, that'll take about a month, they said. He said, no, I'm going to go rent some U-Hauls. We're doing it now. That is the sign of, you can't take that away from him, right? We said, like, get it done now, get it done yesterday. Anyhow, I like that idea. I like what that was a great, with AI, when I think of university and, business school in particular, I'm going, okay, so what is real and what is Memorex? So what are they stealing? And does that matter? But explain that. When you're doing somebody, they send you a research paper, or you make them explain what they actually, because you allow them to use AI because they're going to use it.
I not only allow them, I encourage them to use AI. Go out there and punch buttons, figure out what Claude is, figure out what OpenAI is doing, learn some of this stuff and start using it and bring it into your assignments. Why? Because I'm a very practical and applied professor.
Yeah, and one of the examples you said was, go do your marketing presentation through Claude, ChatGPT, whatever. And then come make your presentation to me.
Yeah. But then you have to be able to answer my question.
Right.
And defend what you've said. So if you turn in a paper, I'm going to challenge you to explain it.
Yeah.
And if you can't explain it, we know who wrote it.
Yeah, because I was thinking plagiarism. Like, how does that all sort of... But
I don't get hung up on it. I just challenge the students to use the tool to their advantage.
Yeah.
But not exclusively and then claim it's their own work, because then they're not learning anything.
Yeah, no, and I talked about this earlier too, as I talk to ChatGPT and Claude all day long. If I'm walking, I literally push the button on Claude and it goes live, and it's an English guy talking to me. Okay? Records a whole conversation. I do that with Chat, and it's a different dude. And I'm fascinated by both answers and whatever. It's shorter. When you talk live with the bots, it's shorter. And I'm just sideshowing here but I think more people should put a little more faith in that, because it actually, I believe you become smarter. Say, for an example, you type into Google, dog training. I don't know. If you type that into ChatGPT, you get a complete different answer. You can look up any site you want. Say you want a dog whistle with a red bell on it. ChatGPT will find that 15 different sites. Whereas Google takes you a little bit. But I love the depth it gives you, and it gets the juices flowing. And like you say, right, you can do a marketing plan and I never thought of this, even though.
But our job as professors and instructors is not, my job is not to teach them how to use ChatGPT.
Right.
That's just a tool today.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, it'll be something else.
Yeah.
My job is to teach them how to use tools and embrace tools and make their and other people's lives better as a result.
Yeah.
And Whether I succeed or not, who knows? But that's the challenge.
But that's the thing is, you
challenge.
must see some students, like I know one of your students who went out and she's done unbelievable. And that's, you know who, she's back back east.
Yep. And we have another student that graduated 10 years ago and moved to Europe and raised a family and got a master's degree and came back here and is involved in a business and started teaching at Okanagan College this year.
No way.
Yes, sir.
From your classroom.
Yep.
Oh, that's cool.
I recruited her, and she just finished her first semester, and it's kind of like watching one of your babies grow up.
Full circle. Wow, man, you realize that when you have grandkids.
Uh-huh.
You realize that, wait, hang on. This isn't about my success. My success is how you raise your kids, and then all of a sudden you got grandkids. You're going, wow, I am a grandfather. Then yeah, it's a strange place to be, right? With the, it's fascinating where you've come from. I think about it. It's like you've got to, I love how you said, scratch that itch of politics. There's a lot of people that have these passions and dreams and they don't follow them through. And a matter of fact, the tools we have now and in life, and even the money, like the money's different. Some of these salaries people are making and stuff. Anyway, the opportunity to get money and to do things that you want to do are out there, and it's easier to do it than ever.
And there's, like you said, more money and more opportunity than ever before.
Ever before.
And I believe a lot of that is because of our acceptance of technological advancements. Not everybody likes that.
Yeah.
Causes disruption.
Yeah.
But many of the fruits that we're enjoying are the result of that plant that we planted over the years and watered and grew. So I actually have a very big interest in the impact of demographics around the world.
Right.
And when I think about demographics, I'm thinking about birth rates. And birth rates around the world, except in Africa, are sinking, like falling off a cliff sinking. And when I say fertility rates, I'm talking about how many babies are being produced in countries. And if you don't create enough babies, eventually, just mathematically, your society ceases to exist unless you inject immigration in, unless you let other people in.
Yeah.
The United States, and to a certain degree Canada, and a few other countries have been very pro-immigration over the years.
Right.
Other countries are not pro-immigrant. They're anti-immigration for political reasons, cultural reasons. Japan, nobody moves to Japan. Finland, nobody moves to Finland. Finland, you can't become a citizen unless you speak the language. It's impossible to learn the language. I've been there. It's impossible. Japan, they don't want outsiders. Okay, so Japan's fertility rate is like almost negative, and they're going to cease to exist as a society, as a separate society, because of that.
Yeah.
So I think about how that impacts me and how it'll impact my children, how it'll impact Canada and North America, and it's kind of interesting. But I also think about our current lives. How long are we going to live on this planet?
Right. Yeah.
Are you going to live to be 65?
Yeah.
Hopefully. 75?
Yeah.
95?
Yeah.
Something like that. I have a chance at living to the age of 90. My children will live to the age of 100.
Right.
Great stuff. Very different from when things like Social Security and pension systems were dreamed up with the idea that the average Canadian, the average American would live to the age of 64 and then die.
Yeah.
So we'll have pension schemes which start paying out at the age of 65 on average. Well, suddenly the math doesn't work anymore. And so we have some serious problems where we have fewer and fewer people contributing to Social Security during their working years, and more people becoming old and drawing on Social Security as they get older. Yeah. And once you reach a tipping point, you can't fix that. You can't replace that. You can't. So I have some higher level concerns about Canada and the United States, and whether my children will ever have any kind of Social Security program. Who knows? It's kind of strange to think about. But really, where I go to is, and I really thought about this upon reading an article the other day, and I just want to quote a line from it.
Yeah, sure.
Because it really brings together this idea of demographics, artificial intelligence, third acts, where we're all going.
Yeah.
As machines assume routine tasks, human comparative advantage shifts toward judgment, ethical discernment, creativity, and wisdom. Meaning machines are doing more of the grunt work, freeing us up to do things like judgment, ethical discernment, creativity, wisdom. These capacities mature over time. You are better at discernment today than you were when you were a 20-year-old, right? Because of your experience, your age.
Yeah.
Okay. The later decades of life, when we're all supposed to retire at the age of 60 and 65, the later decades of life may in fact be the most strategically valuable, not the least valuable. Meaning, why should we go retire when in fact we could contribute in any number of ways for the next 20 years?
Right. Yeah.
And we may have to contribute. My children may have to contribute until they're 80 just to keep the system going.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Good thing, bad thing? I don't know yet.
But the demographics angle is fascinating because I think you also said something about China with they won't survive because there's.
Well, I mean, China as a standalone society, which historically has been a very closed society. They don't like outsiders in there. They have a demographic time bomb that's already gone off and they cannot replace themselves. And we also don't believe the numbers that come out of China that are reported. Are there 1.4 billion Chinese? Probably not. There's probably more like 1.1 billion Chinese. Right. And if you look at their age spread, they're heavily weighted towards older, not younger.
Right.
And that gets worse and worse and worse because there are not enough new ones being created.
Yeah.
And the old ones, oh my God, they're actually living longer, drawing more on the state. And
actually, yeah, you brought that up about Japan and how Japan is
much smaller state, much smaller numbers relative to China, but similar problems. But Japan is more of a free enterprise oriented, very technologically advanced. And they are using robots in ways that we in the West haven't even imagined yet. They're literally using them in old folks' assisted living facilities to serve as companions, to serve as nursing aides, to, in fact, help you go to the bathroom, walk you down the street, sit next to you and listen while you sing a song or they read you a book. These are robots doing these things because there are no young people to do those jobs the way we still have young people do those jobs in perhaps North America. Japan's doing it because, one, they need a solution and they're technologically advanced and supportive, so that works. China doesn't have enough capital to deploy robots everywhere. And I'm not sure we want them to because they might not use them for domestic purposes. So I look at China and say, in my lifetime, I think we'll see the civilization change dramatically because they will not be able to feed themselves. Headquarters, wherever that is, Beijing. There are going to be uprisings all across the imperial kingdom because people aren't getting fed and the central control will collapse. That's my thesis. And then you'll have a bunch of
similar with Russia. Like Russia's, what's their younger, older crowd? What's their demographic?
Remember that used to be the Soviet Union, made up of many other.
Right.
That's all fallen apart.
Right.
And they're currently in a war, so they're killing their former fellow citizens, and their fellow citizens are killing them. And demographically, who in Russia is having babies now? Almost no one. Because it's a terrible future outlook. And I don't mean zero, but relatively speaking, the fertility rate is collapsed. So Russia as a standalone society, it's going to cease to exist.
Well, and doesn't that also fuel war? This
Right
is
now
a different
it does.
subject. Yeah.
Right now it
this
does.
is
I think, I don't have any particular insight here, but I think Mr. Putin is saying this is my last chance to have enough financial and human capital to do what I think should be done, even though I disagree with everything he does.
Yeah.
This is what he thinks should be done. He's doing it because he knows 5-10 years from now, he won't have the manpower. There aren't enough 14-year-olds.
Never thought about the demographics the way you did. That to me is a fascinating theory. I appreciate that. That's like, so I think we've covered, hey, here's a couple of things to sort of wrap up, if you will. And I think you said it earlier. Actually, I'll repeat the question. What advice would you give your younger self?
What advice I give my students, who in some respects I think of as my younger selves.
Yeah.
You live in the greatest part of the world right now, in the greatest time we've ever had.
Yeah.
Healthcare is top notch. Business opportunities are fantastic. Don't get hung up by the nabobs of negativism.
Yeah.
Go out there and seize opportunity. If I could do things over again,
yes, that was,
I would take bigger risks sooner.
Right. And
I would buy a bigger company. I would borrow more money. I would swing for the fences because it's fun. It's exciting. And if you hit a home run in Silicon Valley right now, it's $1 gazillion.
Yeah.
If you hit a home run by buying a newspaper, it's $1 million.
Yeah, yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with it, but I've spent most of my career swinging at smaller fences. If I had to do it again, I would challenge myself to swing at bigger, farther out fences.
That's solid. I really love that. It's so true. It's like, what's 35 million? What's 330 million? Right?
Exactly.
And especially today when you're talking the gazillions. Well, Mark, this has been fun, man. Until next time, thank you for showing up. Appreciate the time.
And thank you for letting me share some of my experiences.
You're going to get me reading about demographics now. I'm fascinated by that.